Hey everybody, it is Shadow Work Wednesdays, the first of the series that I'm doing leading up to the release of my new book, Shadow Work. I'm so excited to be bringing this to all of you on September 20th. We have it available now for pre-order, and everyone who pre-orders the copy is going to get an invite to join us in the virtual VIP book release party. So all you have to do that is pre-order your copy. Today, I'm going to be joined by an amazing Akashic Records practitioner and one of my very best friends, Rebecca Lyons. She's going to be coming on once I can figure out how to get the technology to work. And Chaz, you guys are joining in. Just let me know in the comments where you're joining from, if you've ever done shadow work before, or if you're interested in it. Hey, you're here. Look at that beautiful book.
Hello. Sorry, I'm not looking as glamorous as you with your beautiful red hair.
Oh, thank you. My Slytherin sweatshirt, I feel like really it adds a bit, you know?
Yeah, I've got like some just casual t-shirt on.
I felt like I was like, should I do my makeup this morning? And I was like, no, fuck that. It's Becky. Like we're going for it. We're just gonna be us, and that's what
Who
we
fucking cares?
All right, so thank you for joining me today. I'm super excited to talk about this, and something that people are going to find out when they read this book that they might not know ahead of time is that you were the person who actually told me that I was going to be writing a book years ago, and I laughed in your face.
In our first session, in your first Akashic Records reading.
Yep. How weird is that? Can you tell me
When you
what happened there? Because I feel like nobody would believe me. I have it,
Yeah.
but it's wild.
Yeah, and when you called me and you told me, you were like, remember when you told me I was going to write a book? Because it'd been like 2 years or like a year and a half or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah, yeah. And you're like, well, it's happening. And I was like, oh my God. I remember I was like shaking. I was like, oh my God. Like, I remember I got all like teary. I think I was in this room because when we did your original reading, I lived in London. Now I don't. And but yeah, so I remember it very well. I remember I was in my bedroom when I was doing your first reading, and I remember just being like, they're saying that you're going to write a book, and you've been like, huh?
No.
Yeah, you've been like, what? And I was like, yeah. I was like, that's what they're telling me. And it's like, I used to, when it's like something super specific like that, I would, and even to this day, I'm like, my ego kind of wants to be like, do you want to like, maybe stretch it out a bit and make it so it's not like it could be that or it totally couldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
But like I know that whenever I say like the very specific thing that they're telling me, then like that's always the thing.
It felt very specific because our first reading came in 2020. You and I met at the beginning of the pandemic. And
Yeah.
it felt at the time like the entire world was at a crossroads and nobody knew what was going on. At the time, I was a licensed psychotherapist. I was still seeing clients in private practice, but I was doing shadow work and had my group coaching program for shadow work. So, in terms of time, I had none. I was spending every moment of my life seeing clients, even doing scheduling an Akashic record session was really hard because I just didn't have time. So when you told me that the record said that I was going to write a book and not just one, but multiple, I remember laughing. I mean, like, that chance, there's no way.
Put it on your plate, didn't I?
Yeah. One of those things where I was like, there's no way, but like, that was nice that she said that. And I'll just kind of chalk that up to like, just a nice compliment that someone out there thinks I can. And then in the months that followed, the idea really stuck with me because when I was a kid, I envisioned myself as an author. Like other people wanted to be pop stars or ballerinas or firemen. I wanted to be an author. In my first grade class, when I was little, I was like 6 years old. I was younger than my cohort. I had this book series that I made called The Finger People. And I would like trace my fingers.
I love that.
And every month I would distribute it to the class and to the teacher, and she would read it out loud for the class. So I always wanted to be an author. So when you said that, as much as I laughed it off and was like, there's no way, like I don't have the time, that's never going to happen. It awoke something in me, that remembrance of like, that's what I always wanted to do. I really like to teach. I've been a professor at Penn State University.
Yes. I'm
Something that Void. Yeah. And when you said it, I started manifesting it a little bit where I spent some time really practicing what would it feel like for this to happen? What would it
Yeah.
feel like this came to? And then it did come to me. Three publishing houses came and offered me shadow work books. The first one is the one that I signed on with, which is Union Square Publishing, but two others came afterwards and like literally like weeks apart from each other. Like, hey, do you want to write a book on shadow work? I
Yeah.
That goes to show, first off, how powerful the Akashic records are as a tool, because it can alter the course of your life exponentially if you really listen and kind
Hmm.
of show the wisdom there. And then how powerful manifesting is, because at the time when you mentioned the book, you said about 3 years. It was 2020. It was like April 2020 that we had that session. And here I am now about to have the book go out into the world.
Yeah. Right. And you know what's crazy as well, what's coming up into my mind is because like I know that the stuff that came through for the first book,
This,
or yeah, it was like multiple books, right?
yeah,
And yeah,
yeah.
and you've done multiple books already, but then there's more because I remember stuff that they were saying, and it was to do with like Joe Dispenza, and
Yeah.
I've just come back from the Joe Dispenza retreat, so it's like all weaving, you know.
It always does. You
Yeah.
told me when I was going to write this book, you said they keep showing me journal. They keep showing me journal. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get a journal. And I actually have it here. I bought one that says journal on the front because I was like, she said it says journal. And I started writing down this book. And like these pages are the beginning of the book. Like this is how it started. And then after a while, I was like, oh, like I hate writing in a physical book and then having to transfer stuff online. Maybe it wasn't the journal, and I kind of let that die. But then I had this powerful session about a year ago, shadow work session that I did for myself. And when I came out of it, I was like, I need to write a shadow work journal. And within a day, I channeled all the journal prompts. I created the formatting. I put it on Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing, which is like a self-publishing way of doing your stuff. And I had it online that night. And
Hmm.
I had the aha moment afterwards of like, you idiot, Becky told you you could do this.
Put two and two together, but you do forget, right? Because
100%. It was gone. It was in my head when it happened, but I didn't even put two and two together. I thought I was writing in a journal about the book that was going to come. I never
yeah.
putting a journal out into the world.
And I remember your life back then because you were so busy and you were working so much and you were back to back to back. And I remember you would ask me questions and I'd be like, well, you're gonna you're gonna slow down, and you were like, but how? And I was like, well, and you're not gonna be like seeing your therapist clients anymore. And you were like, that's my dream. And then I remember when you lived in the house, and I just remember today because I was just like flicking through the book again, and you were saying about where you lived in the house, which was like rows of houses, right? And I remember when you were like, I need to sell this house, da 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 da. And then the records were like, you need to put this crystal here, this crystal here, this here. And then boom, it was freaking gone like so quick, right?
The Akashic records are wild that way. So for anybody who doesn't know me and my story, I developed cancer back in 2018. And when that happened, I was working as a psychotherapist. I was extremely burnt out. I was doing a little bit of shadow work, but not to the extent that I do now, obviously. And I had to kind of change a lot of stuff very quickly. And I did. But it wasn't until the pandemic that I really made a turnaround where I stopped doing psychotherapy altogether and I started spending time really just taking care of myself. I moved out of my tiny little row home in South Philadelphia and moved into a gigantic house in the woods in New Jersey. And it was sessions like this that let me know that it was going to be okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have been able to really pull the trigger and do those things if
Yeah.
I felt like I was going to jump and there was going to be nothing to land on. Like I had faith in my abilities. I knew I was good. But the Akashic records for me have always been a bit of a soft landing where it's like, it's a possibility if you choose it. And knowing that
Yeah.
is easier to leap.
Yeah. And I think also like you have these big dreams and but there's always a part of you that's like, but it might not work out like that. But then when you ask the record, they're like, no, it can. That's
That's
right. They're
real.
like, oh, and then you like really go for it. Whereas before you might be like a little bit in, a little bit out, and it takes time. And you obviously, it's kind of like what Joe Dispenza says. It's like when you make that real, like, all right, I'm doing this, then the universe is like, okay, they're in, they want to do this, let's do this. And that is when you kind of like make it happen. And I think that's why I like it so much, because it's the validation, confirmation, permission, clarity. It's like that, those kind of things. You already know it, you already have it. But when it's like, yeah, you can fucking do this, then you're like, okay,
Oh,
let's fucking go. And then it happens so quickly.
yeah,
It happens so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So quickly.
We had this conversation, this first Akashic Record session in like April 2020. I sold my house in November. I put it up for sale the first week of September. And you told me the number. You said it's going to have a 5 ending in it. It's more than you think it's going to be worth. And my realtor, who's my husband's cousin, told me I was crazy to put that number. He was like, nobody's going to pay for that. You're not going to get any offers. This is going to be a mistake. I put crystals where you told me to put them. And within a week, we had a full ask offer on the table. And this is before the housing boom really happened. So that was unbelievable. And it really freed me to be able to do some of the things that we wanted to do. Like the house that we built here in New Jersey, I built it on lands that I lived in a past life. So it's been really healing to be here and to be able to like remember that past life even more and tap into the ancestry that I had for that and really spend time playing with the earth here and like growing things and having a garden, and there's deer in my backyard, like stories. Did you lose volume?
Your house
What
now?
it's called. Yeah.
Your house now is so beautiful. Like imagine like just honestly, it just took me back a couple of years when I just read that again. And I was like, oh my God. And then I was just imagining like how close you are to other people's energies when you're in like that kind of a house. And because you and I live in a detached house in the middle of fields, in the middle of the forest too. So I like, it's just a different energy, right? It's just, it's just such a different energy. And it's like, that came through with my records too. When I was like, I want to live, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. And then even myself, I was like, I'm not going to get that. And then like, we got this house and people like, this is like a 1 in a million house. And I'm like, I know.
And sometimes when something is perfect for us, it doesn't always look that way at first. Like you and I both had issues when we first moved into our new place with various things. Like for you, it was a lot of technology issues.
I had no Wi-Fi for like 4 months.
And for you, like your entire lifeblood is your business that you do online globally. So that was like a huge challenge. But I think things like the Akashic Records and doing our shadow work does give us that safe place to land, to let us know it's going to be okay.
Yeah, 100%. And otherwise, I was I was so much more reactive before doing this work. So like, this is just like when I'm like, okay, can I do this? I never would have believed that I could do the things that I do right now if it wasn't for like this work I've done, shadow work, Akashic Records. Like I would never believe it. I was not the person before.
Yeah, so talk about your experience with shadow work, because when you and I met, you joined Create Your Light Academy, my group shadow work program, and went through some intensive shadow work for, at the time it was 6 weeks, now it's an 8-week program. So what was that experience like?
It was amazing. I loved it. I remember that when we were going through this was like the kickoff of the conspiracy theories. I remember we'd be talking about them and we'd be like, oh my God,
The spiral.
And I was living in a lot of fear back then. A lot of fear because I was just so open-minded. Not necessary. It serves me in a good way. It also serves me in a not so good way. So like anyone was telling me, I was like, oh my God, like believing it's real, because I've seen and experienced past lives, like things that, how could I know this? Like I couldn't know things that I know. So I'm pretty open-minded. And then doing the shadow work course, I think it really helped me tap into myself, go like deep into these meditations and see myself and bring in my guides, and then share the experience afterwards. Was just it was just next level. I mean, I didn't even really know what shadow work was before I met you, like fully, you know. It was something that you Google and you get some random stuff, or Teal Swan talking about it.
That was exactly why I wrote the book and why all those different publishing houses came to me. Every single one of them said the same thing. Everyone's interested in shadow work right now. Nobody knows what the fuck it is. And we need someone who's knowledgeable and has a scientific background to be able to deliver that information appropriately so that it's not like, what is shadow work? Like maybe it's tapping into the subconscious. Maybe it's tapping into the unconscious. Maybe it's ritual sacrifice. I don't fucking know. And when the information is so weird and people are talking about it as if they know what it is because they did read it on Google or they saw like two different speakers talking about it and they like pieced it together, it can be potentially harmful because shadow work has a lot to do with our traumas. And trauma work is very specialized and very niche.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And I think that doing the program that I did with you, I felt very safe. Just knowing that you had that background and that you sort of curated all of the meditation specifically for us for a different reason and a different thing that we were accessing. And then Juliana coming in at the end and doing the like starseed stuff, like where are we from and everything. It was just amazing. I loved it. Like I like getting to know myself on like a deep level. So
That's what shadow work is all about. It's
yeah.
like how deep can we possibly go into your psyche? How far can we go into your unconscious mind, into your past lives, into the space between lives that you've had, into your consciousness as a whole? And what can we find there when we're there? Which is really cool.
It's so cool. And I think that I kind of went into my spiritual journey being like, all right, what do I need to know? What have I got to do? Like, oh, it's not that I enjoyed everything because I don't, but like, I was just like, fucking get this out of my way. All right, I can feel this pattern. I can see this pattern. I'm living in this pattern. How do I get out of this? Like, it's like, I call it like with my Akashic Records, some of my Akashic Records stuff, it's like a cheat sheet, cheat codes, but like, technically you're not cheating because everything is energy and frequency and all that kind of stuff, and like it's just not 95% of like 5% of our brain is conscious. Like, we're not supposed to tap into that other part. Of course we are. Like it's like I feel like we're a bit like, all right, you can tell me that this is the way that it is, but I feel like it's different, so I'm gonna go and explore what I think it is, rather than just take don't ask any questions, it is what it is. Don't open Pandora's box, like all that kind of stuff. I'm like, no, I'm opening Pandora's box.
On a really safe, secure, and boundaried way. Because I think one of the things that was a struggle with writing the book on shadow work is how do I teach people how to do it so that they feel safe and grounded and structured as they go into it? So it's not like opening Pandora's box and it's like everything's flying all over the place. How do we do it in a way that's really contained and structured? Because when we go into the unconscious, anything can come through. It could be a trauma from when you were 2 years old that your brain has long since pushed down and you don't really know what to do with it. And it'll stimulate all those same physical reactions you had when you were 2, like the heart racing, your brain getting foggy, you start to feel that tension that makes your shoulders go all the way up. You might feel sick to your stomach. So focusing on some specific things as we go through that can help curb a lot of that stuff, like focusing on the breath. I focus a lot in the book on talking about how your breath is medicine, because if you can change how you breathe, you change your chemical reactions in your body. And so we're into some of those processes, and it doesn't feel like you're getting slapped in the face as you go through shadow work. It still hurts, but it doesn't hurt to that degree. And the short hurt of experiencing it for the 45 minutes that you're doing shadow work versus the long-term healing where immediately afterwards you start to feel better. Like every round of Create Your Light Academy, people tell me usually by around week 5, 6, 7, they feel like a different person. And people will tell them they even look different because they're just so lighter.
Yes, it's so true. And I think that that's the point, right? You just don't know what's going to come up. You really don't. And that's just kind of the end of the day. It's also life, like, do you want to purposefully open Pandora's box, with some tools to help you do that? or do you want just shit to fly at you constantly and be like, you know, your head's just above the water and you're like, oh my God, I can't breathe. Like, you know, which one would you rather do?
Yeah, it's important to recognize these things as we go through. So I know you haven't had it for that long, but I did get to send you an advanced copy of Shadow
Yeah.
Work. Started getting into it?
Yes, I have. And what I wanted to say to you is obviously I love it. I mean, I know you, and I know like when we've been doing record sessions, you've like you'd run me through the chapters and I'd be like, yeah, yeah, that one, yeah, yeah, oh my God, yeah, yeah. And I just love it. I love how you've got past lives. I love, you know, how you talk about the clairsentience, clairvoyance, all of those things. Like I think my favorite bit though really is like you sharing your story, and even just like how it opens like really got me when you said I've been afraid for most of my life. Like that, I was just like, oh my God, like it's so true. And I feel like I was the same as well. I was just like so afraid for most of my life. And I think I think that's why you and I are like okay at like doing this kind of stuff now, because we're just like, I want to go back there, and nothing is as bad as being that person that I was before.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, come on, bring it on, bring it on, bring it on.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. I think people find shadow work usually after they go through some dark night of the soul experience, some
Mm-hmm.
really intense low. I never
Mm-hmm.
there again. I never want to go through that moment ever in my life. Kind of how I felt with cancer. Like I will do anything to avoid being a patient again because it was horrible.
Exactly. And the fact that you had it in your womb, right? Like
Mhm.
all of the things that you know now, and like, I mean, I don't know, like, are you someone who would say now, you're you're grateful that it happened because it's got you to where you are?
100%. I say
Yeah.
all the time. I try to be really mindful when I say I don't want to sound like an asshole.
Yeah.
Cancer is the worst thing that happened to me. Simultaneously is the greatest thing that ever happened because having that horrific experience led me to that led me to my purpose, how to heal people, how to change my relationship with my body, and I would never have it any other way.
Yeah, and all of the womb work you've done, all of the ancestral work you've done, all of the past life stuff you've done, like it's incredible. So yeah, I think like I love the beginning. I love the way that you explain it. I love that it's like there's not too many words on a page. You know, like when you get a book and there's too many words on a page and you're like, oh, okay. And you know, I love that you just have the journal prompts. You have the bit where you're like, go into the room, shut the door, tell no one to disturb you.
It's
Like
important. You
you
don't know
make it like,
who I work with where they're trying to do shadow work and it's like, hey hon, the delivery is here and it's like
yeah.
you just messed it up.
Yeah, and then you get out of the zone, right? Because you need to go into the zone.
Yeah.
And I think that this is perfect for people who are beginners, because you've now taken them through like the best way to do shadow work, but then also for anyone else, it's also like, okay, it's like a shadow work Bible in a way, where it's like, okay, how do I do this? Oh, okay, oh, that's what I wasn't doing. Do you know what I mean? Like people get like a refresher kind of thing, and they're like, oh, that's where I was going wrong. Like when people can't tap in properly, then they can just go through this, and it's just not too much, but it's like perfect. I love it. And you know what I love is like when I got it, it was crossed, a page was folded, like, but it wasn't folded by me, and it's like the secret of success, and I was like, oh,
Thank you, universe, for that little cosmic.
yeah. I love it. The
I love
time I
little
accidentally
message
manifested my
system.
dream home. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Like I can relate to like so much of it, but also it's like, and it's like, it's not like patronizing, you know, like when some books are a bit like patronizing and and it's not like that. You've got the tone like perfect.
Thank you. I can't take credit for the formatting, like number of words on a page. So much of the book process is really the publishing house, where
uh,
I didn't even choose the title. Originally, this was going to be Shadow Speaking, and they were like, "No, let's call it Shadow Work," because everybody Googles shadow work and doesn't know what it is.
yeah.
The cover design, not me. I didn't choose it. And it's not really even a color scheme I would have thought to use, but I kind of love it now.
I really like it.
What happens inside the book, other than the words, is someone else coming to it, but the words are mine.
The words are yours, and that's all that really matters at the end of the day. But I also love that it's like purple, because like you used to be very purple
Mm-hmm.
at the before as well. So I feel like it carries like that essence of you along with it too.
Yeah.
And I just love it. I really, really, really love it. I love how you bring past lives into it, like, and you dedicate it to Allison.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
going to talk about her in the book, so you guys will get to learn this. But when I started my shadow work journey, I was looking for a mentor, and it was really hard to find somebody who was well versed in shadow work, who was also someone who could speak to the science side. So for me, I ended up by chance doing one of those things, which I do, which is also high fun. And I said, universe, like, send me the person today and let my body experience chills. So it's them. I don't care who it is. It doesn't matter what their following is like. I don't care how they advertise. I don't care what their pictures look like. Just send me the person who's going to help me the most. And that day, I just accidentally like hit the search button. And I didn't even mean to. I was just on Instagram. I hit the search button. And at the top of the page was Allison Kelsey, priestess. I was like, okay. So I clicked, and she had no following. She looked like shadow work, like all of her stuff is like light. There's so many roses. It's all like super airy. And her bio didn't say anything about it either. But what it did say was past life work. And so I was like, you know what? Like maybe she does. I don't know. Messaged her, and she ended up changing my life. She is someone who has absolutely changed the course of my life. And she passed away. As you know, you ended up getting to do an in-person experience with her, which I'm so jealous of because I never actually got to spend any time in person with her. She's in the UK, I'm in the US. But we did weekly sessions for like a year. And then we expanded out to like every other week. And as I got stronger, we just kept pushing out further and further, but we always just stayed friends. And we ended up at the beginning of the pandemic doing a bunch of sessions together to help people heal, like large groups of people. So we would get together any healers who wanted to just do some grid work for the planet, send some healing to places that needed it. And instead of having her run it, she was insistent that we do it together, that it was something that we've done for lifetimes. So I dedicated to Allison. I talk about her a lot. She's someone who really, she just had such a profound impact. I know that she's someone who I'll be with in other lifetimes too.
But how amazing is it that we met online? You're in America, I'm in the UK. I was living in London, South London, and then you told me about Allison, and I think I spoke to her briefly online, and then I moved to Epping, and I was like, hang on a minute. And I messaged her, and I was like, where do you live again? And she used to live here. She used to live in the town that I live in. And I was like, whoa. And then she's like, I don't live there anymore, but I still hold like these in-person ceremonies. And she did one around just before Halloween 2021.
It was right before she got sick.
Yeah, so I guess it was 2021.
2020.
Was it 2020?
She got sick over the winter 2020.
Yeah, so I went to her in person. It was beautiful, and it was like a mile up the road from where I live. And then like just like how I remember speaking to you and Monica and being like, guess what? I'm going to meet Allison tonight. And you were like, oh my God, like so jealous. And like just like what a triangle. Like how like
What are the chances?
you know what I mean? Like
right? Anywhere in the world we could be. I
anywhere
just did
in the world.
last night was 2 Australian women in podcast recording. And then the night before that I did something with someone in Utah. Like she could have been anywhere. And she happened to just be in the town that you're in.
Yeah, she happened to live here for like 20 years or something like that. And, you know, she was really well known. There were so many people there at the event that I went to. She was like a regular. Sorry.
Nope.
I have like an hour's timer on my phone. And yeah, and just like it blows my mind, but it doesn't. Like it does, but it makes me feel like wow, like there's something is happening, you know, something's working, because I was never supposed to move to Essex. I was never ever going to live here. I was never going to live in Epping. I didn't even the only reason I knew of it is because it's like a famous forest. That's the only reason that I would know of it. But I had never been here before. And then Jack found the house that I'd been manifesting. He found it. We came here, and yeah, it was a short period of time. But like I got to meet her, and I got to, yeah, she was such a beautiful, beautiful woman.
Yeah, she really was. It's weird how everything kind of collides and everything. We think the universe isn't working for us, but everything, it's like a giant game of chess. Pieces are being moved into place all the time for a reason. And then it's up to us to use our free will. Are we going to follow the path that's being laid out for us? Or are we actually going to do the harder thing and resist the paths that are being laid out for us, which is the harder thing?
100%. And I think also, like, when it comes to, you know, you reached out to me, you asked me to do something. I could have said no. You put yourself out there by reaching out to me. I put myself out there by doing this 7-day immersive, like, amazing thingy that what was it, like a
Yeah,
masterclass
I
you
did a
ran, right?
7-day masterclass right at the
Yeah.
beginning of the pandemic to just help people because it was a really tough time for everybody, like being trapped in your house, no matter where you were in the world, feeling isolated and scared. And I thought, what better way than to make this into something that's like a beautiful experience? I brought together 6 women that I really love and respect who are all masters of the craft. And I wanted Akashic Records to be part of it so bad. So I did my
Yeah, and you
thing.
knew an Akashic Records person, but you didn't want to use them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you just messaged me, and I was like, I remember listening to the voice notes. I was in my bedroom in Lewisham, and this is when the pandemic was happening. I lived in a high-rise flat, so I couldn't really move around that much. And I remember listening to the voice note, and I was like, Jack, oh my God, this lady's messaged me, and she's asked me to do this, and I was like over the moon. And then I put myself out there, and I said yes, and I showed up, and I did it, and then like I put the vision out there for this house. Jack brought it to us. When we got it, we couldn't quite afford it, but we did it anyway. Then with Allison, like, I reached out to her. It's kind of like this theme, right? You have to make
Yep.
an effort. You have to put yourself out there. You have to kind of, like, you can't expect it just to, like, drop at your feet, kind of a thing. But like, when you make a move, things do drop at your feet.
Absolutely. I talk about this a lot in the book. So the book is a shadow work book, period. But there's a section all about manifestation. And that
Yeah.
was really important for me because doing shadow work has made manifestation really easy because when we don't have energetic bullshit holding us down, making those choices and acting on those opportunities becomes really easy. So for instance, let's say you're offered an opportunity to speak somewhere. If you have a lot of shadow, bless you,
Thank
it's
you.
a lot of shadow and it's like way down. Bless you again. Grandma, my husband's grandma would say, whatever we're speaking right now is the truth because whenever someone sneezes, it's like an emphasis on it.
Yes,
So
and
this,
I have that with yawning and sneezing.
yeah. So anytime energy is moving,
Mm-hmm.
with manifestation, if you wanted to speak and you get this opportunity to speak, the shadow will step in and try to get you not to do that because it's trying to keep you safe and that it's easier not to do things. It's easier to stay where you are. The brain likes homeostasis. And so what it'll do is it'll bring up all your self-doubt. And if you have not done shadow work, you're more likely to shun the opportunity, to look the other way, to not take it. Whereas if you don't have that shadow information holding you down, you take the chance. You take the
Yeah.
opportunity, and that means you manifest it very quickly. So for me, manifestation is shadow work, opportunities, aligned actions, and
Yeah.
that's how it moves. And until you have all 3 things, you're not going to get where you want to go. And then as a bonus, if you have the Akashic Records in your corner, you know that wherever it is that you're landing is a safe place because it's already in your records. It's something that is available to you, an opportunity that you know is going to work out if you take it.
Yeah, 100%. And just even asking the question and being like, well, what is my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing? What do I do next? What should I do right now to get to where I want to be? This is like the cheat code of being like, okay. But then, you could be someone who has a reading and doesn't take any action, and you're not going to get the results. Like, you could
Yeah.
have a reading and you could get so much amazing information that comes through, but if you don't take action on it, then
It's not going anywhere.
not going to happen.
Yeah. One of the questions I used to get asked all the time is, how do I start my spiritual journey? Like, nobody really knows where to go first. And there's a lot of things. There's like energy work, there's Akashic Records, there's Kundalini, there is meditation, there's shadow work. And it's like, what the fuck am I supposed to do first? And my answer, which is obviously self-serving, but there's a reason why I believe it, is shadow work first. Because when you get the crap out of the way and there's nothing weighing you down anymore, now everything else is amplified. Now your Kundalini Kriyas are going to take you into the stars. Now your Reiki is going to clear out your energetic system like that. There's nothing holding it back. Now, when you do the Akashic Records, you're going to feel inspired to take those aligned actions to end up where you already know, based on the records, is a possibility that's open for you. If you don't do shadow work, all that stuff is dampened. You can do Kundalini and it's going to take you to here, but not to there. You can do the Akashic Records and you're going to know possibilities, but you're not going to take actions to get there. You can do Reiki, and at that point, it's like the energy gets cleared, but you're gunked back up within 24 hours. Shadow work first. And I truly, firmly believe that that's the starting point. That if you do that first, everything else becomes exponentially easier, less effortful, freeing, even.
Yeah, and I think that when you truly just realize how much the mind had, how much power the mind has, and you know, it's those unconscious thoughts of like, I'm not good enough. You know, you're not constantly saying to yourself, you know, you ask me to do something and I go, I'm not good enough, Danielle. Like, I'm not going to say that to you, you know, but underneath the layers where I'm like, oh my God, shouldn't I? Oh, what if I fail? Like, failure is great. Like, you should fail. Like, if you don't fail, then you're not living a life anyway, because life isn't about perfectionism and you're not a robot. So it's like, you know, you need.
And a lot of our failings lead us to what we're meant to do. Like, here's a perfect example of that. I became a professor at Penn State University. It must have been like 2017 that I started that. And it felt at the time like a little bit of a failure. Like, I was working as a psychotherapist and I was busy, but financially, I didn't feel like I could support myself. And my mornings were wide open because nobody's coming to therapy at like 8 or 9 a.m. So I added on being a professor to like kill some time, to improve my resume, to be something where like I would be a referral source for any of those kids who come through my classes. They would either one day become clients or they would refer people to me. So there were reasons. And it felt hard to do that at the time because I was juggling so much. It was a stretch. And it ended up as a failure at the end in my eyes, because when the pandemic hit and everything switched to virtual, couldn't really teach anymore. I was at home, I had a baby and I had a toddler, and I was teaching classes with them on top of me and like interrupting it. I'm trying to teach about neuroscience and we're like going over the brain with like, mommy, I want goldfish in the back, or like my daughter just like freakishly hovering and like behind me, where it's like, oh my God, like this feels a little bit like The Shining. So I quit. I quit doing it. And it felt at the time like, what the fuck was I doing? That was such a waste of my time. It didn't go anywhere. Now, years later, I recognize that that was where I learned to teach. And so when I get on and do master classes, I'm so comfortable doing it. I don't need to think about anything. I never plan my talks. When I do hour-long or 2-hour-long conversations, whether it's at huge conferences like Selfish Philly, or if it's at the PA Women's Conference, or if it's a masterclass online, I don't have to think. I can just get on and I can speak about what I know very effortlessly. And it's because of that teaching job that paid me nothing and felt like a drain. And it was an amazing resume booster too, where when I wanted to become an author, having been a professor at a major university is a feather in my cap, and it helps. Our failures are not really failures. It's stepping stone towards something that you're trying to get to. And you might not see it right away, and that's okay. It can become that later.
Yeah, and that's such a sort of like, I don't know why, but the word like surface level is coming up to be like, oh, because it kind of is. It's like the surface level of it is, you had this job, it didn't work out, you see it as a failure. But like the shadow work, the Akashic field, the doing this kind of work, you realize like, no, like just because it didn't work out in a linear way, just because it didn't work out the way I thought it was going to work out,
like it was way better.
It was. And I love that time that I had there. And now I can look back on it in a very lighthearted way instead of feeling that heaviness and shame, guilt, jealousy, anger, all those secondary emotions, which anger is also a primary emotion, but talking about it from a secondary emotion perspective, where it's like there's something underneath it. When we feel those, it usually has shadow at its core because it's triggering something. It's bringing up a reaction that we've known before, which is something I talk a lot about in the book. How to deal with our triggers, how to understand them, how to heal from them using shadow work. And I take people into the depths of understanding what that looks like and step by step how to do it so that you never have to feel that again. Or if you do feel a trigger, it's like a 2 instead of an 8.
Exactly. And I feel like this is the kind of stuff that we should be learning at school, but we don't learn this stuff at school. So like making this more mainstream is going to change the the generations to come's lives. I mean, they have to battle with the internet and social media. So like I was always like, oh my God, these kids, they got it easy. They don't have like, you know, to do all the hard work that we're paving the way for. But then I'm like, oh my God, they grew up never knowing a world before social media, and that in itself is terrifying. But you know, like think of like even just think of like your parenting, the kind of parent that you are now, that you have been through this journey yourself. I mean, you was a parent before you went on this journey, but now you're a completely different person.
A completely different parent too.
Completely different parent.
Shifted. And I think generational curses, there's 4 aspects to shadow work, just for anybody who's unaware. There's past life, there's inner child, there's womb healing, and there's ancestral. And ancestral stuff comes up a lot with like generational curses. And there's a scientific background for those, which I go into in the book as well. The understanding of the epigenetics and how we actually pass this information along the DNA. It's fascinating. And if we don't do our shadow work, if we don't go into the depths and heal, we are undoubtedly passing that genetic information on, but we're also passing it on from a behavioral sense where I'm triggered and the people around me are seeing my trigger, including my kids, and then they're going to emulate that. They're going to start responding that way. They're going to start having the same reaction to stuff. So it's multi-layered, but the more healed we are, which being 100% healed is a fallacy. That'll never happen. We have too many things that happen to us in this life and other lives. But if we can deal with the big ones and really get a handle on them and feel good most of the time, we can create a massive ripple effect of healing for us, for our partners, for our kids, for our nieces and nephews, our siblings, everybody, the whole way around, our friends, everyone feels it.
Yeah, anyone who comes into contact with you, because you emit an energy field, right? So when your energy field is, I don't know, I guess like clean, or like it's kind of like, you know, it's not
so heavy.
It's not so heavy. It's not full of so much darkness in a way where you're like, you know, it's there, but you're like, I don't want to deal with you right now. Like it's just a different energy that you have, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think well, I mean, I know for myself, like I personally feel like I do shadow work pretty much every day because I'm just like, I'm in this work, I'm in it, and I'm like, whew, you know, it's not easy all the time.
No.
But I wouldn't have it any other way. I honestly wouldn't have it any other way, because I want to live my best life. As cheesy as it sounds, I want to enjoy things. Like, I've come here to this earthly realm. I'm allowed to enjoy money. I'm allowed to enjoy material things. You know, like that's what we came here for, an experience. You know, we're having a human experience. And every single person wants different things, and that's great. And you should allow yourself, you know, like, I don't know, I feel like it's like love yourself enough to go through the darkness to come back into the light.
Yeah.
Because if you can't bypass this stuff. Like, that's what people are doing until they go in. You can't bypass this stuff. It's going to get you, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, it's going to get you. And then you're going to be like, you're going to do the work and you're going to go, oh my God, it's really not that bad.
And why didn't I do this sooner?
Why didn't I do this?
I know I felt that way. I could have avoided a lot of stuff if I would have done this sooner.
I know, right?
All right. Well, we're kind of getting to the end of our time. So I wanted to end today, if it's okay with you, with reading a little passage from the book so that people can get it. And actually, your favorite part, you said, was the beginning of the introduction.
Yes.
Hey, Jill. Okay. So you said your favorite part was the beginning of the introduction. So I will read that part, that first.
Yes, that's literally my favorite bit.
Okay, so this is how the book starts for anybody who's interested. It's called Shadow Work. The cover looks like this. You can pre-order right now on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And if you pre-order it, you get a copy or you get a ticket to the VIP virtual book release party, where we're going to be doing some live shadow work, some Kundalini yoga, which I really like to pair with shadow work. We're going to do some live Q&A. I'm going to have some major podcasters and authors joining me for the session who are going to also talk about shadow work and the impact it's had on them. And I have a big surprise at the end that I'm saving for everybody who is live for that on September 20th. And if you can't make it live, you'll get access to the replay if you have a ticket. So here's the introduction to shadow work, the first chapter. So I've been afraid for most of my life, afraid of the dark, afraid of situations that were seemingly scary, and afraid of my own shadow. The thought of traversing the unconscious mind to re-experience traumatic moments in my history was not something I would have signed up for just a few years ago. But then the unthinkable happened. I was diagnosed with cervical cancer the week before my 30th birthday. The news came seemingly out of nowhere, and it shocked both me and my doctors. I had no symptoms and few risk factors, yet cancer came anyway. After my diagnosis, I spiraled into a severe depression. I spent weeks alternating crying and screaming, angry at the world that this was real, but angrier at myself because I believed that I was the reason it happened. I blamed myself because I'd been ignoring the signs my body had been giving me, suggesting that something was wrong, and instead just continued to push forward, focus on the next milestone I was attempting to reach. It took months to come out of that depression, and longer still to come to terms with what I'd been through. The process aged me, trained me, and left me spinning, searching for an answer as to how this was possible. So that's it for now. Hey,
I'm like, oh my God.
A heavy start, but
I hear you read it.
I like the idea of talking in that introduction about how I even got to shadow work in the first place. So if you guys have any questions about shadow work, feel free to message me. I'm sure you can message Rebecca too and ask her her real thoughts about the book and what her experience doing shadow work was like. And Becky, thank you again for doing this with me and hopping on for Shadow Work Wednesdays.
I love it. You know what? I think like just listening to you read that again, I think once you've been on this road for like a couple of years or more, you realize that it's so similar. Like it's not that we all have cancer, of course not, but it's like something happens and we react in a certain way, but we were going and going and going, and then everything crumbles down, and then we have to start again from nothing. And I just think like, oh, it's just like, yeah, it's like you start to see the patterns, right?
Yeah, my goal with shadow work, my hope, like 10 years down the line, is that nobody has to have that moment anymore.
Right.
And that can't happen for everybody. Not everybody's going to read this book. But if I can stop 40 people, 80 people, 100 people.
Exactly. It's going to stop. It's going to have more than that. And it will help those who may have already had that pick themselves up quicker and get to understand why it happened and then not do it again.
That's the hope. So thank you again for coming on. And for everybody who's looking to pre-order, you can hop right onto Barnes & Noble or Amazon, and your free ticket will come if you just show me your receipt. So take a screenshot of it. You can send it to me in DMs or to my assistant at hello@wellnessphl.com. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. And thank you.
Mwah! Get the book. It's amazing.
See you all next week for Shadow Work Wednesdays.
Bye.